Hello family and friends. As I mentioned in an earlier video, we are on a quest learning more about angels from the perspective of various philosophers. It came after I read the book titled The Physics of Angels by Rupert Sheldrake and Matthew Fox, which you can find here in my playlist. In that book, St. Thomas Aquinas was used as one of their sources. And here we are, following those breadcrumbs, leading us back in time to the year 1265 as we meet with the Italian Dominican friar, theologian, and philosopher of those Middle Ages here through these words, bringing them back to life. If you have ever wondered how is it that angels come to have the knowledge they have and the scope of what they know, or if you are curious about the angelic hierarchies or even how similar or different they are from humans, these curiosities are addressed in this video, where Thomas Aquinas uses his unique line of inquiry to bring us a better understanding of these divine beings. But before we move on, leave a comment, hit the like button, and let me know if you have a fascination with angels. Well, I'm sure that if you're here on this video specifically, maybe you do, right? All right, I now turn the page. The Summa Theologica of St. Thomas Aquinas, translated from the Latin by fathers of the English Dominican province, Treatise on Angels 52 through 54. Of the angels in relation to place, 3 articles. We now inquire into the place of the angels. Touching this, there are 3 subjects of inquiry. 1. Is the angel in a place? 2. Can he be in several places at once? 3. Can several angels be in the same place? Whether an angel is in a place. Objection 1. It would seem that an angel is not in a place. For Boethius says, "The common opinion of the learned is that things incorporeal are not in a place." And again, Aristotle observes that it is not everything existing which is in a place, but only a movable body. But an angel is not a body, as was shown above. Therefore, an angel is not in a place. Objection 2. Further, place is a quantity having position, but everything which is in a place has some position. Now, to have a position cannot benefit an angel, since his substance is devoid of quantity, the proper difference of which is to have a position. Therefore, an angel is not in a place. Objection 3. Further, to be in a place is to be measured and to be contained by such a place, as is evident from the philosopher. But an angel can neither be measured nor contained by a place, because the container is more formal than the contained, as air with regard to water. Therefore, an angel is not in a place. On the contrary, it is said in the Collect Prayer Compline Dominican Breviary, "Let the holy angels who dwell herein keep us in peace." I answer that it is befitting an angel to be in a place, yet an angel and a body are said to be in a place in quite a different sense. A body is said to be in a place in such a way that it is applied to such place according to the contact of dimensive quantity. But there is no such quantity in the angels, for theirs is a virtual one. Consequently, an angel is said to be in a corporeal place by application of the angelic power in any manner whatever to any place. Accordingly, there is no need for saying that an angel can be deemed commensurate with a place, or that he occupies a space in the continuous, for this is proper to a located body, which is endowed with dimensive quantity. In similar fashion, it is not necessary on this account for the angel to be contained by a place, because an incorporeal substance virtually contains the thing with which it comes into contact, and is not contained by it. For the soul is in the body as containing it, not as contained by it. In the same way, an angel is said to be in a place which is corporeal not as the thing contained, but as somehow containing it. And hereby we have the answers to the objections. Next question, whether an angel can be in several places at once. Objection 1. It would seem that an angel can be in several places at once, for an angel is not less endowed with power than the soul. But the soul is in several places at once, for it is entirely in every part of the body. As Augustine says, therefore an angel can be in several places at once. Objection 2. Further, an angel is in the body which he assumes, and since the body which he assumes is continuous, it would appear that he is in every part thereof. But according to the various parts there are various places. Therefore, the angel is at one time in various places. Objection 3. Further, Damascene says that where the angel operates, there he is, but occasionally he operates in several places at one time, as is evident from the angel destroying Sodom in Genesis 19, chapter 25. Therefore, an angel can be in several places at one time. On the contrary, Damascene says that while the angels are in heaven, they are not on earth. I answer that an angel's power and nature are finite, whereas the divine power and essence, which is in the universal cause of all things, is infinite. Consequently, God, through his power, touches all things, and is not merely present in some places, but is everywhere. Now, since the angel's power is finite, it does not extend to all things, but to one determined thing. For whatever is compared with one power must be compared therewith as one determined thing. Consequently, since all being is compared as one thing to God's universal power, so is one particular being compared as one with the angelic power. Hence, since the angel is in a place by the application of his power to the place, it allows that he is not everywhere, nor in several places, but in only one place. Some, however, have been deceived in this matter. For some who were unable to go beyond the reach of their imaginations supposed the indivisibility of the angel to be like that of a point. Consequently, they thought that an angel could be only in a place which is a point. But they were manifestly deceived, because a point is something indivisible, yet having its situation, whereas the angel is indivisible and beyond the genus of quantity and situation. Consequently, there is no occasion for determining in his regard one indivisible place as to situation. Any place which is either divisible or indivisible, great or small, suffices according as to his own free will he applies his power to a great or to a small body. So the entire body to which he is applied by his power corresponds as one place to him. Neither, if any angel moves the heavens, is it necessary for him to be everywhere. First of all, because his power is applied only to what is first moved by him. Now, there is one part of the heavens in which there is movement first of all, namely, the part of the east. Hence, the philosopher Aristotle in Physics, chapter 7, text 84, attributes the power of the heavenly mover to the part which is in the east. Secondly, because philosophers do not hold that one separate substance moves all the spheres immediately, hence it need not be everywhere. So then, it is evident that to be in a place appertains quite different to a body, to an angel, and to God. For a body is in a place in a circumscribed fashion, since it is measured by the place. An angel, however, is not there in a circumscribed fashion, since he is not measured by the place, but definitively, because he is in a place in such a manner that he is not in another. But God is neither circumscriptively nor definitively there, because he is everywhere. From this we can easily gather an answer to the objections, because the entire subject to which the angelic power is immediately applied is reputed as one place, even though it be continuous. The next question: whether several angels can be at the same time in the same place. Objection 1. It would seem that several angels can be at the same time in the same place. For several bodies cannot be at the same time in the same place because they fill the place. But the angels do not fill a place, because only a body fills a place, so that it be not empty, as appears from the philosopher, Aristotle's Physics, chapter 4, text 52 and 58. Therefore, several angels can be in the one place. Objection 2. Further, there is a greater difference between an angel and a body than there is between two angels, but an angel and a body are at the one time in the one place, because there is no place which is not filled with a sensible body, as we find proved in Physics chapter 4, text 58. Much more than can two angels be in the same place. Objection 2. Further, there is a greater difference between an angel and a body than there is between two angels, but an angel and a body are at the one time in the one place, because there is no place which is not filled with a sensible body, as we find proved in Physics 4, text 58. Much more then can two angels be in the same place. Objection 3. Further, the soul is in every part of the body, according to Augustine, but demons, although they do not obsess souls, do obsess bodies occasionally, and thus the soul and the demon are at the one time in the same place, and consequently, for the same reason, all other spiritual substances. On the contrary, there are not two souls in the same body. Therefore, for a like reason, there are not two angels in the same place. I answer that there are not two angels in the same place. The reason of this is because it is impossible for two complete causes to be the causes immediately of one and the same thing. This is evident in every class of causes, for there is one proximate form of one thing, and there is one proximate mover, although there may be several remote movers. Nor can it be objected that several individuals may row a boat, since no one of them is a perfect mover, because no one man's strength is sufficient for moving the boat, while all together are as one mover, insofar as their united strengths all combine in producing the one movement. Hence, since the angel is said to be in one place by the fact that his power touches the place immediately by way of a perfect container, as was said, there can be but one angel in one place. Reply to Objection 1. Several angels are not hindered from being in the same place because of their filling the place, but for another reason, as has been said. Reply to Objection 2. An angel and a body are not in a place in the same way, hence the conclusion does not follow. Reply to Objection 3. Not even a demon and a soul are compared to a body according to the same relation of causality, since the soul is its form, while the demon is not. Hence, the inference does not follow. Of the local movement of the angels, 3 articles. We must next consider the local movement of the angels, under which heading there are 3 points of inquiry. 1. Whether an angel can be moved locally. 2. Whether in passing from place to place he passes through intervening space. 3. Whether the angel's movement is in time or instantaneous. Whether an angel can be moved locally. Objection 1. It seems that an angel cannot be moved locally, for as the philosopher Aristotle proves in Physics Book 6, text 32 and 86, nothing which is devoid of parts is moved, because while it is in the term wherefrom, it is not moved, nor while it is in the term whereto, for it is then already moved. Consequently, it remains that everything which is moved, while it is being moved, is partly in the term wherefrom, and partly in the term whereto. But an angel is without parts, therefore an angel cannot be moved locally. Objection 2. Further, Movement is the act of an imperfect being, as the philosopher says, but a beatified angel is not imperfect. Consequently, a beatified angel is not moved locally. Objection 3. Further, movement is simply because of want, but the holy angels have no want. Therefore, the holy angels are not moved locally. On the contrary, it is the same thing for a beatified angel to be moved as for a beatified soul to be moved, but it must necessarily be said that a blessed soul is moved locally, because it is an article of faith that Christ's soul descended into hell. Therefore, a beatified angel is moved locally. I answer that a beatified angel can be moved locally, as, however, to be in a place belongs equivocally to a body and to an angel. So likewise does local movement. For a body is in a place insofar as it is contained under the place, and is commensurate with the place. Hence it is necessary for local movement of a body to be commensurate with the place, and according to its exigency. Hence it is that the continuity of movement is according to the continuity of magnitude, and according to priority and posteriority of local movement. As the philosopher says in Physics, Book 4, Text 99, but an angel is not in a place as commensurate and contained, but rather as containing it. Hence it is not necessary for the local movement of an angel to be commensurate with the place, nor for it to be according to the exigency of the place, so as to have continuity therefrom. But it is a non-continuous movement. For since the angel is in a place only by virtual contact, as was said above, it follows necessarily that the movement of an angel in a place is nothing else than the various contacts of various places successively, and not at once. Because an angel cannot be in several places at one time, as was said above, nor is it necessary for these contacts to be continuous. Nevertheless, a certain kind of continuity can be found in such contacts, because, as was said above, there is nothing to hinder us from assigning a divisible place to an angel according to virtual contact, just as a divisible place is assigned to a body by contact of magnitude. Hence, as a body successively, and not all at once, quits the place in which it was before, and thence arises continuity in its local movement, so likewise an angel can successively quit the divisible place in which he was before, and so his movement will be continuous, and he can all at once quit the whole place, and in the same instant apply himself to the whole of another place, and thus his movement will be continuous. Reply to Objection 1. This argument fails of its purpose for a twofold reason. First of all, because Aristotle's demonstration deals with what is indivisible according to quantity, to which responds a place necessarily indivisible, and this cannot be said of an angel. Secondly, because Aristotle's demonstration deals with movement, which is continuous. For if the movement were not continuous, it might be said that a thing is moved where it is in the term wherefrom, and while it is in the term whereto, because the very succession of wheres regarding the same thing would be called movement. Hence, in whichever of those wheres the thing might be, it could be said to be moved. But the continuity of movement prevents this, because nothing which is continuous is in its term, as is clear, because the line is not in the point. Therefore, it is necessary for the thing moved to be not totally in either of the terms while it is being moved, but partly in the one and partly in the other. Therefore, according as the angel's movement is not continuous, Aristotle's demonstration does not hold good, but according as the angel's movement is held to be continuous, it can be so granted that, while an angel is in movement, he is partly in the term wherefrom and partly in the term whereto, yet so that such partiality be not referred to the angel's substance, but to the place. Because at the outset of his continuous movement the angel is in the whole divisible place from which he begins to be moved, but while he is actually in movement, he is in the part of the first place which he quits, and in part of the second place which he occupies. This very fact, that he can occupy the parts of two places, appertains to the angel from this, that he can occupy a divisible place by applying his power, as a body does by application of magnitude. Hence it follows regarding a body which is movable according to place, that is, divisible according to magnitude, but regarding an angel, that his power can be applied to something which is divisible. Reply to objection 2. The movement of that which is in potentiality is the act of an imperfect agent, but the movement which is by application of energy is the act of one in act, because energy implies actuality. Reply to objection 3. The movement of that which is in potentiality is the act of an imperfect, but the movement of what is in act is not for any need of its own, but for another's need. In this way, because of our need, the angel is moved locally, according to the book of Hebrews chapter 1 verse 14. They are all ministering spirits sent to minister for them who receive the inheritance of salvation. The next question: whether an angel passes through intermediate space? Objection 1. It would seem that an angel does not pass through intermediate space, for everything that passes through a middle space first travels along a place of its own dimensions before passing through a greater. But the place responding to an angel who is indivisible is confined to a point. Therefore, if the angel passes through middle space, he must reckon infinite points in his movement, which is not possible. Objection 2. Further, an angel is of simpler substance than the soul, but our soul, by taking thought, can pass from one extreme to another without going through the middle. For I can think of France and afterwards of Syria without ever thinking of Italy, which stands between them. Therefore, much more can an angel pass from one extreme to another without going through the middle. On the contrary, if the angel be moved from one place to another, then, when he is in the term whither, he is no longer in motion, but is changed. But a process of changing precedes every actual change. Consequently, he was being moved while existing in some place, but he was not moved so long as he was in the term whence. Therefore, he was moved while he was in mid-space, and so it was necessary for him to pass through the intervening space. I answer that, as was observed above in the preceding article, the local motion of an angel can be continuous and non-continuous. If it be continuous, the angel cannot pass from one extreme to another without passing through the middle space, because, as is said by the philosopher Aristotle, Physics, Book 5, Text 22, and 6, Text 77, the middle is that into which a thing which is continually moved comes, before arriving at the last into which it is moved, because the order of first and last in continuous movement is according to the order of the first and last in magnitude, as he says. But if an angel's movement be not continuous, it is possible for him to pass from one extreme to another without going through the middle, which is evident thus. Between the two extreme limits there are finite intermediate places, whether the places be taken as divisible or as indivisible. This is clearly evident with regard to places which are indivisible, because between every 2 points there are infinite intermediate points, since no 2 points follow one another without a middle, as is proved by Physics, Book 6, Text 1. And the same must of necessity be said of divisible places, and this is shown from the continuous movement of a body. For a body is not moved from one place to place except in time, but in the whole time which measures the movement of a body, there are not 2 nows in which the body moved is not in one place and in another. For if it were in one place and the same place in 2 nows, it would follow that it would be at rest there, since to be at rest is nothing else than to be in the same place now and previously. Therefore, since there are infinite nows between the first and the last now of the time which measures the movement, there must be infinite places between the first from which the movement begins and the last where the movement ceases. This again is made evident from sensible experience. Let there be a body of a palm's length, and let there be a plane measuring 2 palms along which it travels. It is evident that the first place from which the movement starts is that of the one palm, and the place wherein the movement ends is that of the other palm. Now it is clear that when it begins to move, it gradually quits the first palm and enters the second. According, then, as the magnitude of the palm is divided, even so are the intermediate places multiplied, because every distinct point in the magnitude of the first palm is the beginning of a place, and a distinct point in the magnitude of the other palm is the limit of the same. Accordingly, since magnitude is infinitely divisible, and the points in every magnitude are likewise infinite potentiality, it follows that between every 2 places there are infinite intermediate places. Now, a movable body only exhausts the infinity of the intermediate places by the continuity of its movement, because as the intermediate places are infinite in potentiality, so likewise must there be reckoned some infinitudes in movement which is continuous. Consequently, if the movement be not continuous, then all the parts of the movement will be actually numbered. If therefore any movable body be moved, but not by continuous movement, it follows either that it does not pass through all the intermediate places, or else that it actually numbers infinite places, which is not possible. Accordingly then, as the angel's movement is not continuous, he does not pass through all intermediate places. Now, the actual passing from one extreme to the other without going through the midspace is quite in keeping with an angel's nature, but not with that of a body, because a body is measured by and contained under a place, hence it is bound to follow the laws of place in its movement. But an angel's substance is not subject to place as contained thereby, but is above it as containing it. Hence it is under his control to apply himself to a place just as he wills, either through or without the intervening place. Reply to objection 1. The place of an angel is not taken as equal to him according to magnitude, but according to contact of power, and so the angel's place can be divisible and is not always a mere point. Yet even the intermediate divisible places are infinite, as was said above, but they are consumed by the continuity of the movement, as is evident from the foregoing. Reply to objection 2. While an angel is moved locally, his essence is applied to various places, but the soul's essence is not applied to the things thought of, but rather the things thought of are in it. So there is no comparison. Reply to objection 3. In continuous movement, the actual change is not a part of the movement, but its conclusion. Hence, movement must precede change. Accordingly, such a movement is through the midspace. But in movement which is not continuous, the change is a part, as a unit is a part of a number. Hence, the succession of the various places, even without the midspace, constitutes such movement. The next question. Whether the movement of an angel is instantaneous? Objection 1. It would seem that an angel's movement is instantaneous, for the greater the power of the mover and the less the moved resists the mover, the more rapid is the movement. But the power of an angel moving himself exceeds beyond all proportion the power which moves a body. Now the proportion of the velocities is reckoned according to the lessening of the time, but between one length of time and any other length of time there is proportion. If therefore a body is moved in time, an angel is moved in an instant. Objection 2. Further, the angel's movement is simpler than any bodily change, but some bodily change is effected in an instant, such as illumination, both because the subject is not illuminated successively as it gets hot successively, and because a ray does not reach sooner what is near than what is remote. Much more, therefore, is the angel's movement instantaneous. Objection 3. Further, if an angel be moved from place to place in time, it is manifest that in the last instant of such time he is in the term whereto. But in the whole of the preceding time, he is either in the place immediately preceding, which is taken as the term wherefrom, or else he is partly in the one and partly in the other. It follows that he is divisible, which is impossible. Therefore, during the whole of the preceding time, he is in the term wherefrom. Therefore, he rests there, since to be at rest is to be in the same place now and previously, as was said. Therefore, it follows that he is not moved except in the last instant of time. On the contrary, in every change there is a before and after. Now the before and after movement is reckoned by time. Consequently, every movement, even of an angel, is in time, since there is a before and after in it. I answer that some have maintained that the local movement of an angel is instantaneous. They said that when an angel is moved from place to place during the whole of the preceding time, he is in the term wherefrom. But in the last instant of such time, he is in the term whereto. Nor is there any need for a medium between the terms, just as there is no medium between time and the limit of time. But there is a mid-time between two nows of time. Hence they say that a last now cannot be assigned in which it was in the term wherefrom, just as in illumination and in the substantial generation of fire, there is no last instant to be assigned in which the air was dark, or in which the matter was under the privation of the form of fire. But at last time can be assigned, so that in the last instant of such time there is light in the air, or the form of fire in the matter. And so illumination and substantial generation are called instantaneous movements. But this does not hold good in the present case, and it is shown thus. It is of the nature of rest that the subject in repose be not otherwise disposed now than it was before, and therefore in every now of time which measures rest, the subject reposing is in the same where in the first, in the middle, and in the last now. On the other hand, it is of the very nature of movement for the subject moved to be otherwise now than it was before, and therefore in every now of time which measures movement, the movable subject is in various dispositions. Hence the last now it must have different form from what it had before. So it is evident to rest during the whole time in some disposition. For instance, in whiteness is to be in it in every instant of such time. Hence it is not possible for anything to rest in one term during the whole of the preceding time, and afterwards in the last instant of that time to be in the other term. But this is possible in movement, because to be moved in any whole time is not to be in the same disposition in every instant of that time. Therefore, all instantaneous changes of the kind are terms of a continuous movement, just as generation is the term of the alteration of matter, and illumination is the term of the local movement of the illuminating body. Now, the local movement of an angel is not the term of any other continuous movement, but is of itself, depending upon no other movement. Consequently, it is impossible to say that he is in any place during the whole time, and that in the last now he is in another place. But some now must be assigned in which he was last in the preceding place. But where there are many now succeeding one another, there is necessary time, since time is nothing else than the reckoning of before and after in movement. It remains then that the movement of an angel is in time. It is in continuous time if his movement be continuous, and in non-continuous time if his movement is non-continuous, for, as was said, his movement can be of either kind, since the continuity of time comes of the continuity of movement, as the philosopher says, Aristotle, Physics, Book 4, Text 99. But that time, whether it be continuous or not, is not the same as the time which measures the movement of the heavens, and whereby all corporeal things are measured, which have their changeableness from the movement of the heavens, because the angel's movement does not depend upon the movement of the heavens. Reply to objection 1. If the time of the angel's movement be not continuous, but a kind of succession of nows, it will have no proportion to the time which measures the movement of corporeal things, which is continuous. Since it is not of the same nature, if, however, it be continuous, it is indeed proportionable, not, indeed, because of the proportion of the mover and the movable, but on account of the proportion of the magnitudes in which the movement exists. Besides, the swiftness of the angel's movement is not measured by the quantity of his power, but according to the determination of his will. Reply to Objection 2. Illumination is the term of a movement, and is an alteration, not a local movement, as though the light were understood to be moved to what is near, before being moved to what is remote. But the angel's movement is local, and besides, it is not the term of movement, hence there is no comparison. Reply to Objection 3. This objection is based on a continuous time, but the same time of an angel's movement can be non-continuous. So an angel can be in one place in one instant and in another place in the next instant without any time intervening. If the time of the angel's movement be continuous, he is changed through infinite places throughout the whole time which precedes the last now, as was already shown. Nevertheless, he is partly in one of the continuous places and partly in another, not because his substance is susceptible of parts, but because his power is applied to a part of the first place and to a part of the second, as was said above. Of the knowledge of the angels, 5 articles. After considering what belongs to the angel's substance, we now proceed to his knowledge. This investigation will be fourfold. In the first place, inquiry must be made into his power of knowledge, secondly, into his medium of knowledge, thirdly, into the objects known, and fourthly, into the manner whereby he knows them. Under the first heading, there are 5 points of inquiry. 1. Is the angel's understanding his substance? 2. Is his being his understanding? 3. Is his substance his power of intelligence? 4. Is there in the angels an active and a passive intellect? 5. Is there in them any other power of knowledge besides the intellect? First question, whether an angel's act of understanding is his substance. Objection 1. It would seem that the angel's act of understanding is his substance. For the angel is both higher and simpler than the active intellect of a soul. But the substance of the active intellect is its own action, as is evident from Aristotle, his book De Anima, and from his commentator Averroes, AD 1126 through 1198. Therefore, much more is the angel's substance his action, that is, his act of understanding. Objection 2. Further, the philosopher says, Aristotle Metaphysics, Book 12, Text 39, the action of the intellect is life, but since in living things to live is to be, as he says, it seems that life is essence. Therefore, the action of the intellect is the essence of an angel who understands. Objection 3. Further, if the extremes be one, then the middle does not offer from them, because extreme is farther from extreme than the middle is. But in an angel, the intellect and the object understood are the same, at least insofar as he understands his own essence. Therefore, the act of understanding which is between the intellect and the thing understood is one with the substance of the angel who understands. On the contrary, the action of anything differs more from its substance than it does its existence, but no creature's existence is its substance, for this belongs to God only, as is evident from what was said above. Therefore, neither the action of an angel nor of any other creature is its substance. I answer that it is impossible for the action of an angel or of any creature to be its own substance, for an action is properly the actuality of a power, just as existence is the actuality of a substance or of an essence. Now, it is impossible for anything which is not a pure act, but which has some admixture of potentiality, to be its own actuality, because actuality is opposed to potentiality. but God alone is pure act. Hence, only in God is his substance the same as his existence and his action. Besides, if an angel's act of understanding were his substance, it would be necessary for it to be subsisting. Now, a subsisting act of intelligence can be but one, just as an abstract thing that subsists. Consequently, an angel's substance would neither be distinguished from God's substance, which is his very act of understanding subsisting in itself, nor from the substance of another angel. Also, if the angel were his own act of understanding, there could then be no degrees of understanding more or less perfectly, for this comes about through the diverse participation of the act of understanding. Reply to Objection 1. When the active intellect is said to be its own action, such predication is not essential, but concomitant, because since its very nature consists in act, instantly, so far as lies in itself, action accompanies it, which cannot be said of the passive intellect, for this has no actions until after it has been reduced to act. Reply to Objection 2. The relation between life and to live is not the same as that between essence and to be, but rather as that between a race and to run, one of which signifies the act in the abstract and the other in the concrete. Hence it does not follow, if to live is to be, that life is essence. Although life is sometimes put for the essence, as Augustine says, memory and understanding and will are one essence, one life, yet it is not taken in this sense by the philosopher, Aristotle, when he says that the act of the intellect is life. Reply to Objection 3. The action which is transient, passing to some extrinsic object, is really a medium between the agent and the subject receiving the action. The action which remains within the agent is not really a medium between the agent and the object, but only according to the manner of expression. For it really follows the union of the object with the agent. For the act of understanding is brought about by the union of the object understood with the one who understands it, as an effect which differs from both. Next question. Whether in the angel to understand is to exist? Objection 1. It would seem that in the angel to understand is to exist, for in living things to be is to be, as the philosopher says. But to understand is, in a sense, to live. Therefore, in the angel to understand is to exist. Objection 2. Further, cause bears the same relation to cause as effect to effect, but the form whereby the angel exists is the same as the form by which he understands at least himself. Therefore, in the angel to understand is to exist. On the contrary, the angel's act of understanding is his movement, as is clear from Dionysius. But to exist is not movement, therefore in the angel to be is not to understand. I answer that the action of the angel, as also the action of any creature, is not his existence. For as it is said, there is a twofold class of action, one which passes out to something beyond and causes passion in it, as burning and cutting, and another which does not pass outwards, but which remains within the agent, as to feel, to understand, to will. By such actions nothing outside is changed, but the whole action takes place within the agent. It is quite clear regarding the first kind of action that it cannot be the agent's very existence, because the agent's existence is signified as within him, while such an action denotes something as issuing from the agent into the thing done. But the second action of its own nature has infinity, either simple or relative. As an example of simple infinity, we have the act to understand, of which the object is the true, and the act to will, of which the object is the good, each of which is convertible with being. And so to understand and to will of themselves bear relation to all things, and each receives its species from its object. But the act of sensation is relatively infinite, for it bears relation to all sensible things as sight does to all things visible. Now the being of every creature is restricted to one in genus and species. God's being alone is simply infinite, comprehending all things in itself, as Dionysius says. Hence the divine nature alone is its own act of understanding and its own act of will. Reply to objection 1. Life is sometimes taken for the existence of the living subject, sometimes also for a vital operation, that is, for one whereby something is shown to be living. In this way, the philosopher Aristotle says that to understand is, in a sense, to live, for there he distinguishes the various grades of living things according to the various functions of life. Reply to objection 2. The essence of an angel is the reason of his entire existence, but not the reason of his whole act of understanding, since he cannot understand everything by his essence. Consequently, in its own specific nature as such an essence, it is compared to the existence of the angel, whereas to his act of understanding it is compared as included in the idea of a more universal object, namely truth and being. This it is evident that although the form is the same, yet it is not the principle of existence and of understanding according to the same formality. On this account, it does not follow that in the angel to be is the same as to understand. The next question, whether an angel's power of intelligence is his essence. Objection 1. It would seem that in an angel the power or faculty of understanding is not different from his essence, for mind and intellect express the power of understanding. But in many passages of his writings, Dionysius styles angels intellects and minds. Therefore the angel is his own power of intelligence. Objection 2. Further, if the angel's power of intelligence be anything besides his essence, then it must needs be an accident, for that which is besides the essence of anything, we call it accident. But a simple form cannot be a subject, as Boethius states. Thus, an angel would not be a simple form, which is contrary to what has been previously said. Objection 3. Further, Augustine says that God made the angelic nature nigh unto himself, while he made primary matter nigh unto nothing. From this it would seem that the angel is of a simpler nature than primary matter, as being closer to God. But primary matter is its own power, therefore much more is an angel his own power of intelligence. On the contrary, Dionysius says that the angels are divided into substance, power, and operation. Therefore, substance, power, and operation are all distinct in them. I answer that neither in an angel nor in any creature is the power or operative faculty the same as its essence, which is made evident thus. Since every power is ordained to an act, then according to the diversity of acts must be the diversity of powers. And on account on this, it is said that each proper act responds to its proper power. But in every creature, the essence differs from the existence and is compared to it as potentiality is to act, as is evident from what has been already said. Now the act to which the operative power is compared is operation, but in the angel to understand is not the same as to exist, nor is it any operation in him, nor in any other created thing, the same as his existence. Hence the angel's essence is not his power of intelligence, nor is the essence of any creature its power of operation. Reply to objection. An angel is called intellect and mind because all his knowledge is intellectual, whereas the knowledge of a soul is partly intellectual and partly sensitive. Reply to objection 2. A simple form which is pure act cannot be the subject of accident, because subject is compared to accident as potentiality is to act. God alone is such a form, and of such is Boethius speaking there, but a simple form which is not its own existence, but is compared to it as potentiality is to act, can be the subject of accident, and especially of such accident as follows the species. For such accidents belong to the form, whereas an accident which belongs to the individual and which does not belong to the whole species results from the matter, which is the principle of individuation, and such a simple form is an angel. Reply to objection 3. The power of matter is a potentiality in regard to substantial being itself, whereas the power of operation regards accidental being. Hence there is no comparison. Next question, whether there is an active and a passive intellect in an angel. Objection 1. It would seem that there is both an active and a passive intellect in an angel. The philosopher Aristotle says that in the soul, just as in every nature, there is something whereby it can become all things, and there is something whereby it can make all things. But an angel is a kind of nature. Therefore, there is an active and a passive intellect in an angel. Objection 2. Further, the proper function of the passive intellect is to receive, whereas to enlighten is the proper function of the active intellect, as made clear in the book De Anima, Book 3, Text 2, 3, and 18. But an angel receives enlightenment from a higher angel and enlightens a lower one. Therefore, there is in him an active and a passive intellect. On the contrary, the distinction of active and passive intellect in us is in relation to the phantasms, which are compared to the passive intellect as colors to the sight, but to the active intellect as colors to the light, as is clear from De Anima. But this is not so in the angel. Therefore, there is no active and passive intellect in the angel. I answer that the necessity for admitting a passive intellect in us is derived from the fact that we understand sometimes only in potentiality and not actually. Hence, there must exist some power which, previous to the act of understanding, is in potentiality to intelligible things, but which becomes actuated in their regard when it apprehends them, and still more when it reflects upon them. This is the power which is denominated the passive intellect. The necessity for admitting an active intellect is due to this, that the natures of the material things which we understand do not exist outside the soul as immaterial and actually intelligible, but are only intelligible in potentiality so long as they are outside the soul. Consequently, it is necessary that there should be some power capable of rendering such natures actually intelligible, and this power in us is called the active intellect. But each of these necessities is absent from the angels. They are neither sometimes understanding only in potentiality with regard to such things as they naturally apprehend, nor again are they intelligible in potentiality, but they are actually such. For they first and principally understand immaterial things, as will appear later. Therefore, there cannot be an active and a passive intellect in them, except equivocally. Reply to objection 1. As the words themselves show, the philosopher Aristotle understands those two things to be in every nature in which there chances to be generation or making. Knowledge, however, is not generated in the angels, but is present naturally. Hence, there is not need for admitting an active and passive intellect in them. Reply to objection 2. It is the function of the active intellect to enlighten, not another intellect, but things which are intelligible in potentiality, insofar as by abstraction it makes them to be actually intelligible. It belongs to the passive intellect to be in potentiality with regard to things which are naturally capable of being known, and sometimes to apprehend them actually. Hence, for one angel to enlighten another does not belong to the notion of an active intellect. Neither does it belong to the passive intellect for the angel to be enlightened with regard to supernatural mysteries, to the knowledge of which he is sometimes in potentiality. But if anyone wishes to call these by the names of active and passive intellect, he will then be speaking equivocally, and it is not about names that we need trouble. The next question, whether there is only intellectual knowledge in the angels. Objection 1. It would seem that the knowledge of the angels is not exclusively intellectual, for Augustine says that in the angels there is life which understands and feels. Therefore, there is a sensitive faculty in them as well. Objection 2. Further, Isidore says from the book De Sumo Bono that the angels have learnt many things by experience, but experience comes of many remembrances, as stated in Metaphysics, Book 1, Chapter 1, from Aristotle. Consequently, they have likewise a power of memory. Objection 3. Further, Dionysius says that there is a sort of perverted fantasy in the demons, but fantasy belongs to the imaginative faculty. Therefore, the power of the imagination is in the demons, and for this same reason, it is in the angels, since they are of the same nature. On the contrary, Gregory says, referencing Homer, that man senses in common with the brutes and understands with the angels. I answer that in our soul, there are certain powers whose operations are exercised by corporeal organs. Such powers are acts of sundry parts of the body, as sight of the eye and hearing of the ear. There are some other powers of the soul whose operations are not performed through bodily organs, as intellect and will. These are not acts of any parts of the body. Now, the angels have no bodies naturally joined to them, as is manifest from what has been said already. Hence, of the soul's powers, only intellect and will can belong to them. The commentator says the same thing, namely that the separated substances are divided into intellect and will. And it is in keeping with the order of the universe for the highest intellectual creature to be entirely intelligent, and not in part, as is our soul. For this reason, the angels are called intellects and minds, as was said above. A twofold answer can be returned to the contrary objections. First, it may be replied that those authorities are speaking according to the opinion of such men as contended that angels and demons have bodies naturally united to them. Augustine often makes use of this opinion in his books, although he does not mean to assert it. Hence he says in the De Civ. Dei that such an inquiry does not call for much labor. Secondly, it may be said that such authorities and the like are to be understood by way of similitude, because since sense has a sure apprehension of its proper sensible object, it is a common usage of speech, when he understands sometimes for certain, to say that we sense it, and hence it is that we use the word sentence. Experience can be attributed to the angels according to the likeness of the things known, although not by likeness of the faculty knowing them. We have experience when we know single objects through the senses. The angels likewise know single objects, as we shall show, yet not through the senses. But memory can be allowed in the angels, according as Augustine puts it in the mind, although it cannot belong to them insofar as it is a part of the sensitive soul. In like fashions, a perverted fantasy is attributed to the demons, since they have a false practical estimate of what is the true good, while deception in us comes properly from the fantasy, whereby we sometimes hold fast to images of things as to the things themselves, as is manifest in sleepers and lunatics. The next video will contain treatises 55 through 57, addressing issues such as the angels' knowledge of material things and how they're able to immediately and perfectly within their capacity to comprehend things and perceive things and acquire their knowledge. All right, hopefully you've been enjoying this. Leave me a comment, hit the like button, and yes, subscribe to the channel.